Please join me in welcoming Joshua Entis.
What a great to start. Just wanted to thank you all for being here today. It's honestly, it means the world to me that you took time out of your weekend, took time out of your Veg Fest schedule, stopped eating all the really good food and stuff out there to come listen to me talk, so it means a lot. And like I was already introduced in a great way, my name is Joshua Entis. I'm an animal liberation activist from Seattle, Washington, and for the last year, I've been traveling around the world on my compassion tour, which has been my 365-day, well, yes, that would be a year, journey, raising awareness for the animals on a global scale and working with vegans and activists to help them more efficiently and effectively be a voice for the animals. So I really want to start off just really going over my journey because my life wasn't always devoted to animal rights activism. I grew up eating the standard American diet of meat, cheese, eggs on top of meat, cheese, and eggs. I think I had like 2 or 3 eggs over hard every single morning. It was a thing for me. And I was living sort of according to how other people told me to live, how my friends were living, what the media told me to do, what movies told me to do. I just lived according to other people. I used to hunt. I used to fish, so I know that side of it as well. And I didn't used to hunt or fish for food. I did it for pleasure and for fun and for hitting a moving target. So I didn't even have that justification of I used to hunt to sustain my life or my family. It was something completely on the opposite. So I've experienced that with taking an animal's life, but still going home and saying I loved my cat and my dog. And I realized that I was just living a very speciesist lifestyle, valuing the life of some species over others. I thought some species were family and could cuddle with me in bed, and I thought some species were food and entertainment and clothing. So I had that whole lifestyle, and I experienced all of that stuff. And it really wasn't until 2014 when veganism found me, when my life shifted, when everything changed, because there was something always in my life, always inside the essence of my being, my mind, body, and my soul, that would scream out at me saying, you're not living in alignment with your true values and beliefs. Because I called myself an animal lover, and I would do anything for my cats, dogs, fish at home, which is weird because I used to fish as well, and for any other animal that I took care of in my home. And I rescued all my animals too. So I had that love within, like most people. And I do like to preface that with this story because there's a lot of people that I've met throughout this year of travel, a lot of non-vegans that say, hey, you're this preachy, entitled vegan who thinks you're better than us. Well, no, I was in your shoes. I lived that life, and I lived that lifestyle to the extreme, because most people haven't taken the life of an animal themselves. So I've experienced that, I've seen that, I've felt that. But it really wasn't until like 2014 when my life changed, and that's what sort of catapulted me on this journey, because it's when, growing up, I had a lot of stomach issues and a lot of skin issues. So my vegan story is really, really boring, but I'm also happy that it was so boring because it shows just how easy being vegan is. But I was sitting on the couch with my best friend at the time, and we were just Googling healthiest diet, and veganism came up, so we were just like, let's go vegan, and we were vegan from 2014. So it's really simple, but I don't have some like cool, extreme transition to vegan story. But what I realized is that journey wasn't about being vegan, it was about being plant-based. I thought veganism was a diet choice in the beginning, not because I wanted to continue supporting industries like I was going to horse races, I went to circuses, I went to zoos in this 2-year span of being vegan. That's why I look at it more as being plant-based. I still bought products that were tested on animals. I think I was eating honey. I was wearing wool. I was wearing leather. I may have been wearing fur. And so that's why 2 years of being vegan was really 2 years of being plant-based, the diet side of it. It wasn't until 2016 when Earthlings found me. So 2014 was veganism found me, plant-based found me, and then it was education throughout those 2 years. I didn't want to be someone supporting these industries that are exploiting and testing on animals. I was just uneducated, like most of us are. It's not our fault. It's innocent ignorance for a lot of people, like myself growing up. Because when I found out about veganism and activism, I thought I'd been lied to most of my life. I thought I was living a lifestyle in accordance to how someone else wanted me to live and not speaking to my true values and beliefs that wanted to come up. So Earthlings, for those of you that don't know what Earthlings is, it's a very powerful documentary that was made in 2005 that takes you really deep into 5 industries in which humans exploit animals, and it takes you into the medical testing side, the entertainment side, the food side, pretty much animal agriculture in a whole, and what we do to animals. And that's when mind, body, and soul aligned, and I was like, dude, like, you thought you were vegan for yourself and taking care of yourself, and I knew that I was saving the planet a little, environmentally speaking. I knew I was saving some animals, but I was selfishly choosing a vegan diet or a plant-based diet for myself. Earthlings woke me up, and I was in shock watching this video, and I said, I can't buy products tested on animals anymore. I can't go to a zoo. I can't go bet on an individual. I can't wear their skin. I can't wear their fur. I can't do this because I asked myself two questions at the end of this documentary. Do I think that animals are here for us or with us? And if given the choice, would an animal choose life or death? And I quickly answered, with and life. And so I knew that animals were here with us, and I knew they would choose life if given the choice. So that's when I knew that I had no other lifestyle that I could live. I had to be vegan, and I had to now be active. It's one thing to sit idly by and be vegan for yourself. You know, yes, you do an amazing stuff for your own health, for the planet. You save some animals. Don't get me wrong, for anyone who's vegan and is not active, like I said, this isn't a place of judgment. It was a learning process for me. But what I'm like, hopefully you'll take from today is just my learning process, and that you can get some value out of what I experienced. And I had woken up and I said, I can't do this anymore. It's one thing to idly sit by and do something for myself. I need to get out there and help do something for the innocent and vulnerable beings of this planet by the billions that are being exploited for human use. Just because I enjoyed the way a burger tasted, or the way clothes looked on me, or the way that they entertained me, I needed to stop that. I needed to actively go out there and help other people make the connection. I needed to bring Earthlings to other people. I needed to go out there and educate and inspire and hopefully uplift people so they can look deep within and find the compassion that they already have that is there. We all love animals. We all say we love animals. Majority of non-vegans, I would say probably 90% of non-vegans still have animals at home, and we pay for their vet bills, and we take them to the park, and we let them sit in the front seat of the car sometimes, and our kids in the back. You know, we do this stuff for our animals, and we let them, you know, sleep on our pillow and all this fun stuff. And that's because we have the compassion within. We just need to start extending that to all beings, and that's what veganism is about. Being plant-based is about the diet side, but what I quickly realized is that veganism isn't just a diet, it's an ideology. It's a framework of the way we can live our lives and the way we can walk on this earth. So that's when activism came into my life, and my life changed when I went vegan, first off, or plant-based. And my life changed even more when I decided to become an activist. And that's when the next step of this journey happened. That's when I was like, I used to hunt and fish and eat animals every single day, and now I'm trying to go out there and actively help other people make the connection and hopefully choose veganism as well. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see how it goes from there. So I started off very easy with my activism journey, leafleting at Seattle Pride Festival, passing out free vegan starter kits, and it was a great experience to see the reception and how people were taking veganism. And it was very easy for me. It was non-confrontational. I was able to just, hey, here's a free vegan starter kit, here's some information about veganism, and people were very receptive to that. Then I was like, you know what, I really like this. I need to try something else. It's amazing. I had some really good conversations with people who were like making the connection with having a conversation with me. Then I went to an organization called Direct Action Everywhere, where they, at the time, we went into a grocery store and sang what's called the Liberation Song around the meat department. That was my second form of activism. I loved that, but I still wasn't getting what I needed from activism. It was great, but I was trying it all. Then an organization called the Save Movement came into my life, and I went to a live auction in Seattle and bore witness to the animals being sold to the veal and the egg industry, local farmers. That was an emotional experience. I was able to connect with these individuals and see them before they were sold to these industries, to where they would be killed maybe that day or the next day. But I was like, you know what, I need more. Then there's an organization called Anonymous for the Voiceless. I see a lot of AVTs, I love it. And I started the Seattle chapter of Anonymous for the Voiceless, which is a street outreach organization we set up in the public with people standing in a cube formation, holding computer screens, showing footage of what happens in animal agriculture, and we do public outreach. We allow the public to choose to watch. We don't leaflet. We don't say, hey, come watch our stuff. We allow the people to come choose to watch on their own accord, and then we'll have compassionate, understanding conversations with them, and hopefully at the end of those conversations, they'll leave taking veganism seriously. That's when I found my true love of activism, because I majored in communication in college. I was a salesman. I loved talking with people. So that's where I fit, and it was great. So I did about 6 months of doing Anonymous for the Voiceless in Seattle, and then I had this crazy idea. I was like, I need more. I was like getting addicted to helping people. Like, I'm glad I'm addicted to vegan activism, because it's so beautiful when someone makes the connection and says, and finds it within themselves that they love animals, they're against animal cruelty. Now they align it together and start putting their actions with their beliefs. That's a beautiful thing to experience. I'm sure a lot of the activists in here can understand that feeling when someone makes the connection with you and chooses that lifestyle. So I got addicted, and I had this crazy idea. I was like, let's quit my amazing sales job that allows me to work from home, pays me well, and become a full-time animal rights activist and travel the world and make no money and be really, really tired and see a lot of stuff. I was like, that's a crazy idea. And my friends were like, yeah, it's a crazy idea. My family's like, we love you, we support you. And I was like, all right, so maybe this is something that I can do. And then in comes the Compassion Tour, which was, I had some friends make fun of the name, but I stuck by it, the Compassion Tour. And we're fighting for compassion, so I had to do it. And you had to brand it some way. And that's when I said, you know what, let's do this. But I didn't have formal planning. I worked hard for another 8 to 9 months, saved a good amount of money, had this little skeleton map in my head of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, and had this, I'm also addicted to big challenges. So I was like, let's do a year, let's try to do 25 countries, and let's just throw myself into any form of activism that could come. And bear in mind, I'd only been an activist for 6 months. So this idea was like way out of left field. And, I can use that joke now. In Europe, no one knew what left field was, so it's great. So that's an amazing thing. And so I had this idea, and then I worked pretty hard, saved up some money, made some contacts. I had an Instagram at the time as a food blog, shows another level of my activism before being this form of activism. And I went under the name This Little Vegan, so it was great. And I connected with some people in other countries, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna come, I'm gonna do some activism. Hello, welcome. No, don't be sorry, come on in. And I was like, I gotta connect with some people, I gotta go. And then in last August 21st, what would that be, 2017? Yes, 2017, I quit my job, I sold all of my stuff in my apartment, I packed everything into 2 bags, and I got a one-way ticket to Toronto, where I met these two right here, who were my first hosts on the Compassion Tour, and now great friends. And I started my tour in Toronto, and that's why today is really special for me. This is the last talk of my tour. It's been almost a year and 1 month today, so I'm ending it after 5 vigils next week. So if you're around this week, we're going to get active and do some vigils, which I'll talk about at the end. So this is why today really means a lot to me. So once again, I really appreciate you all being here. But I got that one-way ticket. I came to Toronto, and from that date until now, I've been to 21 countries, 120 cities. I've done 250 actions for the animals, 80 talks, and have had the amazing opportunity of meeting thousands of animal rights activists from around the world, and a bunch of vegans who have become active, and non-vegans who have become vegan and then active. It's been an amazing journey. It has been an exhausting one, and I haven't had time to process the last year. I haven't really looked within, I'm doing that next week, to even say what's your favorite country or something like that. But I want to share with you today a few of the things that I learned in my journey from becoming non-vegan to, or going from non-vegan to a full-time animal liberation activist, because that's a big sway in a year and a half's total time. And I hope that you're able to take something from today, and hopefully it inspires you or encourages you to choose veganism, to, if you're vegan, to get active, and if you're an activist, to have a little bit more inspiration, to do something big, to do something that resonates with you. The first thing that I learned after traveling the world for a year doing activism full on is the fact that activism is extremely scary. It scares the heck out of me, it scares the heck out of a lot of people, but if we want to fight for the animals and see a world where all beings are free, we need to work on eliminating that fear. In the beginning of my journey, when I got to Toronto, I did not know what to do. I was like, all right, so I've done a cube of truth, but now what? Now I'm in another country, different laws, different people. What do I do? And I think it's okay to accept this fear, accept the feelings that you have of being in an uncomfortable situation. And the thing that also stuck with me, which I've met a lot of people from around the world who have the fear of what other people think of them. As vegans and as activists, we are looked at as preachy, entitled, judgmental, extreme. I used to call vegans that before I was vegan. And we have this fear, and we look to other people to get validation from them. So that really fuels our fear a little bit more. Like, if I go do this disruption in a grocery store, is my mom going to say, all right, Joshua, you're extreme? If I go stand out in front of a slaughterhouse, are my friends going to say, why are you standing out in front of a slaughterhouse? That's weird. Like, why are you doing that? You could do something else with your time. But what I want to, the information I want to give to you all is the fact that you should never compromise your values and beliefs for anyone else. You do not need permission or acceptance from anyone else to live vegan, to choose a lifestyle that seeks to avoid as much unnecessary harm as humanly possible to animals. You don't need permission from someone. There's going to be people that don't agree with that lifestyle. Then when you take it a next step further and become active, there's going to be people that call you extreme because you're now questioning their actions. Of course they're going to call you extreme. That's why sometimes you got to come from a place of being understanding and non-judgmental so you don't turn people off. There's activism for the judgmental, and if you want to scream, there's activism that you can scream. But we need to eliminate this fear because it's only going to hold us back. When I eliminated that fear, when I eliminated the thought of having validation from what other people thought, my activism started to soar. I started to go do the things that felt right to me. We're on the right side of history with this one. No innocent being deserves to suffer just because I enjoy the way they taste. We think that that's normal and that that's right and that's legal because it is according to modern day society. But we can see things in the history of our time that were normal and were right and were accepted by everyone. And we see where those things have kind of gone in time. So I know that we're on the right side of history. We've got to eliminate that fear so we can bottle up that fear, turn that into fuel that's going to help you get active, and in turn save a lot more innocent beings and the planet and humanity. So we got to eliminate that fear. We got to put that beside us and use that as fuel to light the vegan fuel, or the vegan fire, the activism fire, whatever it is where you're getting on your stage from being non-vegan to a vegan activist. Whatever you need, remember, never compromise your values and beliefs if truth is on your side. If an innocent being is going to suffer at the expense of your actions, remember, if you're choosing to exclude from that action and you're choosing to align your life one that's consistent with the belief that all animals deserve love, equality, and freedom, never compromise your values and beliefs. It's only going to help you progress in your journey. The second thing that I learned is you will find your voice. I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning of my activism. I was trying all different forms of activism. And what I found is just like any job, when you start a job, you don't really know what you're doing. That's why you have job training. You shadow people. You learn the processes of your job. Same thing goes with becoming a full-time activist or an activist. You learn what works well for you. I leafleted. I made food Instagram posts of beautiful smoothie bowls and was like, look at how good veganism is. It tastes good. And I did that. I went and did disruptions in grocery stores, standing outside of slaughterhouses. I did it all because what I was doing is I was trying to find my voice. And that's what I encourage everyone to do, is try to find your voice. You all bring your own unique voice to the vegan movement, to the activist movement. You have something different to say than you. And you. I don't want to exclude anyone. So we all have this unique voice, so we should be utilizing that in a way that's comfortable for us. The thing that I realized a lot while traveling the world is a lot of activists are burning themselves out, or a lot of people are afraid to get into activism because they think there's only one form of activism to do. There's many. We can do so much activism. It's about, if we want to maximize our efficiency and our effectiveness and sustain our activism long term and fight till the end until all beings are free, we got to start utilizing our strengths and aligning our activism with our passion. If you love to write, start a blog, start an Instagram, post on Facebook. If you like to sing, write music. There's some amazing music with an animal liberation message out there. If you love to communicate and talk with people, go out and do vegan outreach. If you thrive off of being as close to suffering as possible and you connect with individuals that way, then go out and bear witness in front of a slaughterhouse. If you like that direct action stuff, go and liberate lives. Like, there are so many ways that we can be active. And then try other forms of activism, because you'll never know if you like this form versus that form. but focus your main sort of activism on the stuff that lights you up and that is comfortable to you, because that's how you're going to sustain your activism long term. That's how you're going to be most effective when you're out there. And when you find your voice, like for me, I had never given a public talk on veganism. Really, I don't think I ever gave a public talk other than being forced to in college. And what happened was I did all this activism, and I started doing Cubes of Truth, doing vegan outreach. And I was like, no, I need a little bit more. Then I started bearing witness a lot more. Then I was like, I need more. I needed to get inside these places. So I started doing that. And then I started giving talks and workshops, which I've done over 80 in the last year, because I found my voice and I found my place was to help vegans get active and help activists strengthen and work on their advocacy. So I started focusing on helping people communicate more effectively in vegan outreach. And then I focused on self-care and self-love, helping activists avoid burnout and doing tips and tricks that we can sort of not get to a place where we're running ourselves into the ground with our activism. And that was my voice. And if you asked me in the start of it, I was like, nah, I'm just going to go do some cubes and I'm going to go eat at vegan restaurants and meet activists from around the world. But I found my voice. So when getting into activism, be okay with the fact that your voice might not jump out to you right away. It might take 6 months, a year of trying different forms of activism until you get to a place where you're loving what you do wholeheartedly, which I love what I do wholeheartedly. The third thing I realized is that you will meet some of the most incredible people in the world. As a vegan and as an activist living in a non-vegan world, we see a lot of negativity. We feel a lot of pain. We feel a lot of sadness. We feel a lot of emotions because of what we see. It's like waking up in a nightmare, but that nightmare is a reality. When 56, they say, billion land animals are killed needlessly every year just for human consumption, not to mention the sea life, not to mention just every other industry in which humans exploit animals. Like, that's crazy to wake up and see that. I can't walk down a street and see people eating at a restaurant without seeing the individual who had their life taken from them. So we see a lot of this stuff. And what this does, and what this did for me, and I'm sure a lot of activists can understand this, is it makes you have a pretty negative view on the world and a pretty misanthropic view. Pretty much sometimes I think people suck. And that's really hard because I try to focus on being as positive as possible, and I don't want to think people suck because I used to suck, if I'm basing it off of that. So I try not to do that, and what I realized is that the people that I've met whilst becoming a vegan activist, not just traveling the world, but being in my own hometown and meeting vegan activists, are some of the most compassionate, selfless, dedicated, and inspiring people I've ever met. It's these people that I've met that give me hope and restore my faith in humanity. And so that's how I'm able to cope with seeing this negative light on the world. It's by seeing these amazing and beautiful human beings who are fighting to end like this massive injustice in this world. And my grandpa said it over and over. I call it the tiny box, and I'm still figuring it out, the little box theory. Because my grandpa was like, when I became vegan, he's like, don't you think you're putting yourself in a small box being vegan? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess you could say that, because I didn't know where I stood at the time. And then when I became an activist, he was like, now don't you think you're putting yourself in an even smaller box? And I thought about it for a while, and I was like, let me get back to you on that. And I thought about it, because he just wanted me to not, I don't know what he really wanted me, but I was trying to justify for my grandpa, but sorry, Grandpa, he's not watching this, he doesn't do social media. But I thought about it, and I got back to him, and I was like, you know what, Grandpa, you're right. I put myself in a very tiny box, an extremely small box, but you know what? I love being in that box. I love every single human being that is inside of that box. I love the values and beliefs that are in that box. I love the food that's in that box. So I'm going to accept being in that box. And my goal now is to expand that box and to keep bringing more people into this tiny box. So I love it. Patent pending, or whatever you want to say, tiny box theory. So verbal non-disclosure, don't steal that from me. But I'll go more on that. But that's how I feel about the people you will meet, because I like to emphasize for new vegans, people who are just going vegan and people who are just becoming active, you do wake up and you see the world through a different lens. It is 100% true, and so I want people to also realize that it does get better. Yes, there are a lot of moments where it feels down and it feels like we're not winning, and it feels like we still have a lot of work to do, which we do, that's the reality. But I try to remind myself of every single person that's within my little box. and that we're part of this team. We're part of this cohesive unit that is fighting so that every being on this planet is free and that this planet is healthier and that we are healthier. So, tiny box theory. I love it. You will meet amazing people. The fourth thing that I learned is we have to work together. They say that in any social justice movement, the biggest threat to the movement is the movement itself. And that was a tough thing for me to realize while traveling around the world. I got in really deep into a lot of the activist communities around the world, and one common theme was infighting. Vegans and activists fighting, vegans and activists. It's a weird concept for some of the non-vegans or vegetarians. You're like, that doesn't sound productive to the movement. It isn't, and it happens in every single movement in the history of time. They say that Martin Luther King Jr. spent, 60 to 70% of his time dealing with infighting. Imagine what he could have done with a fraction of that time to progress the movement even faster. So what I realized is that we need to work together and not apart. And in this movement, if we have this idea of my activism is better than your activism, or my organization is better than your organization, my social media platform is bigger than your social media platform, I'm cooler than you, and yes, I've heard that this last year of travel, it needs to stop. If we have this end goal of total animal liberation, of living in a world where all beings are free, where this planet is free, where we're free. I know it's a big mission, but we're fighting for it. If we have this mission, we need to come together. If we take the stat that 1% of the world's vegan and 1% of those vegans are vegan activists, that's about 750,000 vegan activists in this world. That's a very small number, and I think it is a lot less. I think we are way under the 300,000 vegan activists in this world. That's just my guess. I hope someone fact checks me and they're like, no, you're wrong, because I'd like to see more. It is growing, don't get me wrong. But if we're this small number and we are fighting each other, that's just going to make our numbers smaller. If we want to achieve a goal and we work together as one unit, we don't have to all do the same form of activism. As you saw, we can do all different forms of activism. We need everyone doing everything that they can and utilizing their skills and their powers to fight for the animals. That's how we achieve that end goal quickly. Then we jump across to other forms of activism. We try it and we support each other. If the end goal is the same, let's work together and not apart. If the end goal is not the same, then we can have a chat. Then we can communicate as individuals and say, hey, are you losing sight of the mission here? This is our end goal, blah, blah, blah. We need to focus on that end goal, but we need to also focus on not hating each other. We are human beings, and I think the biggest cause of infighting is lack of communication. If you have an issue with someone, all the communities I've been to, don't get me wrong, I'm not just singling out Toronto, it happens all over the world, even in Estonia, a very small activist community. And if it's happening there, it's happening everywhere. So if there's an issue you have between two organizations, why not the organizers get together and be like, hey, I'm having a few concerns, blah, blah, blah. Can we chat about this? I'd love it if we can work together. Maybe we can do some activism together because, right? Let's work on the big picture here. We are fighting for the same thing, right? And then they're like, yeah, sometimes people just need a kick in the butt to eliminate the ego. Ego is the biggest cause of infighting. And so if we can stay humble and remember what we're fighting for, who we're fighting for, then that's going to keep us on track. And working together is so important because it's amazing when people come together to do something. We all know what it's like to see an action on social media or on the news where 120 activists went and locked themselves to a factory farm and did something together. That's how we make change. But when we have this organization and this organization battling each other and activists are afraid to go to this activist event, sorry for the non-vegans and non-activists, I'm painting a bad picture on activism right now. I'm telling you, it's really amazing, but this stuff is sort of under the radar. You don't see it unless you put yourself deep into this movement, and all I'm saying is to maximize our effectiveness as activists, we got to focus on each individual trying not to support this infighting and to work on trying to solve this and to get to a place where we're able to work together. The fifth thing, water break. I did learn to drink a lot of water while traveling. So, fifth thing I learned is that is fifth, right? Yeah, great, thank you. Fifth thing I learned is that this is happening all over the world. There is this common misconception, and I heard it doing outreach in every single country. This doesn't happen in my country. Standards are better here. This is RSPCA approved. Animals are free range here and organic. It happens all over the world. Animals are being needlessly bred into existence, enslaved, tortured, tested on, exploited, and killed all over the world. It doesn't matter if they have a bigger cage. if they have a bigger grass field to graze on, if they get a bigger pool to swim in, they're still confined in a zoo. It doesn't matter about how an animal is treated, what food they are fed, or how much space they have outside. If at the end of the day they're still being exploited and killed for needless human consumption, then that's an issue for me. And that's an issue for every animal liberation activist out there, because animals are not here with us, or not here for us, they are here with us. Because if given the choice, we all know, and I've asked everyone around the world, if given the choice, would an animal choose life or death? And it's a simple answer that the majority of everyone has given me, it's life. So it happens all over the world. I've been inside of a slaughterhouse in Austria. I've been inside of a caged egg farm in Australia, a free-range egg farm in Denmark. I have seen an endangered fin whale be completely dismembered in Iceland. I have seen what happens to animals in every single country that I've been to, and it's all the same. An animal goes from life to death only because we continue to choose taste over life. And not because we're bad people, don't get me wrong. It's just because we've been living a life we're comfortable with, it's normal, we're conditioned to, we're wired that way. No wonder it's hard. It took me 24 years. It takes people a lot longer. So I saw this happen around the world, and what we need to realize as non-vegans, as vegans, as vegetarians, and as activists is it happens everywhere. And we need to sort of debunk this misconception, because at the end of the day, if an animal has a nicer life, but they still have a knife taken across their throat for a hamburger, it's still an animal being killed so that someone could have a hamburger, which we don't need to eat, which we know that that's the case. We do not need to eat animals to survive. So it happens all over the world. I've seen it all. So keep that in your mind when going vegan or becoming an activist, that it's the same. And we need to sort of not try to say, oh, RSPCA, which is Australia's humane standards of animal agriculture, completely false. And we got to stop thinking that, oh, my country has local dairy farms. Like when I was in Ireland, that's what I heard from everyone. It's, oh, our cows, Betsy the cow gets to live a really nice life. But I was like, at the end of the day, when she stops producing milk, what do? And they're like, oh, we send her to slaughter. I'm like, well, there you go. And then they're like, oh, like I get it now. So it happens all over the world. Remind yourself that. And just keep that in mind so that when people bring that up, we can understand that it doesn't matter where it happens or how it happens, it's still happening. And we need to fight so that we can end it. Hello? And then the last thing I learned is that this is the hardest job that I have ever had. And I know this is negative. I promise there will be a positive at the end, but I want to share a few things about this. And going back off of when you wake up in this nightmare, when you become vegan and when you become an activist, you see stuff. I cannot take the images out of my head from what I've seen on this last year of travel. I can't get the screams of pigs out of my head. I can't get the cries of activists out of my head. I can't get the smell of being inside of a free-range egg farm out of my head and out of my nose, it feels like. And sometimes I think, I didn't sign up for this. Like, I don't want to do this. But then I remind myself, I have to. And I realize that it is our moral obligation, it is our duty to not only be vegan, but to be active. Because if we choose a lifestyle that's in alignment with our core beliefs of love and compassion for all beings, then we have to help other people come to that same conclusion. Because that's how we achieve that end goal of having all beings free a lot quicker. And so by realizing that this was the hardest job, I accepted this reality and said, you know what? I am so happy that this job found me. I'm so happy that I'm able to wake up and do this because I'm fighting for justice, and that fulfills me. It's the first time in my life that I felt like I had purpose. It's the first time in my life that I felt like I was following my passion. Even though it's the hardest job I've ever had in my life, and waking up at 4 a.m. to go to a slaughterhouse every time, I'm like, why the heck am I going to a slaughterhouse? But I realized that if I'm not going to do it, I realized that someone has to do it. We have to do it. I'd like to see more people doing it so that I could take a day off of going to a slaughterhouse. That'd be nice if we can have a lot more vegan activists, but we have to do it. And it is the hardest job, but it's a very rewarding job. And I want to share two experiences before I finish this up and then go to a little Q&A that were the biggest takeaway, and I don't want to say takeaways, I don't want to say most memorable, it's weird to say this, but it's two experiences that sit with me and will for the rest of my life. And what I realized after that. First was when I was inside of a pig slaughterhouse in Vienna, Austria. This was a very unique situation. We had a very special opportunity to get access into this place, which is very hard to get into these places around the world, especially for an American. And the unique part about this is I was able to spend 3.5 to 4 hours in the holding pen with about 30 pigs. So they were trucked in, they were taken off the truck, and they were in this back, probably half the size of this room. And we spent about 3.5 to 4 hours singing songs, talking, spending time with these pigs. And after that, the slaughterhouse owner came in and he said, 3 of you can come into the kill floor. So 3 out of the 5 of us were allowed to walk the pigs through the door and bear witness to the entire kill floor process. I did it to document, and I was able to film with my phone, and I was able to put it up on Instagram, and it went viral, and so many people were impacted by that video. But what I experienced there changed me, because I was seeing life to death within the same day. The second experience that really stuck with me was when I was in Australia, and I got to see a different side of this. I got to participate in my first open rescue. I got to go in with a team of people to a caged egg farm in Australia, and this facility was one of the largest there. There were 5 sheds. There were 250,000 egg-laying hens in cages within these sheds, and we went inside, we documented, and we liberated 16 hens that night and took them to sanctuary that night, to where I watched them touch dirt for the first time. And then the next morning, I got them to see sunlight for the first time, and to dust bathe for the first time, and to flap their wings. And this was such a beautiful experience, because I had seen the opposite side a month prior inside of this slaughterhouse. I saw the death side. I saw the life, death, and now I got to see life. And I got to remind myself of why I do what I do. And the tough part about those experiences, and why they will always sit with me, is because I used to be, the actions that I used to contribute to were the reason why those animals are there in the first place. By my choice to consume animals for taste, and to wear animals, and to eat their secretions, I was the reason why they were in cages. I was the reason why activists had to go inside and risk their life and their freedom to save an individual. I was the reason why these pigs were carted into the back of this slaughterhouse and then killed right in front of my eyes. And I know this is negative, and I'm not usually like the negative emotional type, but I just had to express that and talk about that. It's the first time I've really shared that experience on this trip. But the positive side about it is you all have a choice. You all have a choice that's going to be one that's going to not support that. You get to choose to live I can't say this line. Maybe I'm getting emotional for the first time. No. You get to choose a life that doesn't contribute to that. You get to choose a positive, compassionate life that focuses on bringing compassion, justice, freedom, and respect to all beings. You can go into the store and buy a product that doesn't support these hens that were put inside these cages, so that that's where their life was going to be, a machine for our use to then be killed when they can't produce eggs anymore. You don't have to support that lifestyle or those industries with your money. You can live a lifestyle that supports the opposite. You can choose to live a lifestyle that doesn't support that, and that actively goes out there and helps save more lives. That's where veganism comes in, and activism. And I know that for the non-vegans or for the vegetarians, this might sound like crazy hearing from a full-time animal liberation activist, and that's why I'm so grateful that you're here, because whether you were dragged here from a vegan or you just chose to come here willingly, it's amazing, because I wish I would have chosen to go to a talk like this a lot earlier. Every vegan's like, I wish I would have gone vegan earlier. You know what? I don't wish I would have. I mean, this is bad. I wish I would have, but I'm glad I went vegan when I did, because it really kicked my butt into gear. Because if I would have been vegan from earlier on, I might not have catapulted my life into the dedicated activism that I would be doing now. Because I woke up and said, wow, what have I been doing for 24 years of my life? I was supporting these pigs. I ate bacon almost every morning. And then being inside of this slaughterhouse and seeing an individual go from life to death made me feel so good about the lifestyle that I've chosen now. And then going inside of this place and liberating an animal and seeing them live a life that they deserve, one that has sunlight and fresh air and food and happiness and friends hanging around, freedom. Seeing that made me realize that even though this is the hardest job in the world, I wouldn't take it back for anything. I'm signed up for life. I'll sign a complete, whatever you call it, contract. There we go. Can't even say basic words these days. I'll sign a lifetime contract to devote my life to this because I know what I'm doing is right. And I spent my whole life trying to do something that was right, but it never felt right. So I really appreciate you listening to this chat. I hope you're able to find some value. To any non-vegans that are in this room, thank you again for listening to me talk. I encourage all of you to do a little bit of research on your own. Go watch some videos, some documentaries if you're almost there. Seek your vegan friends for some help. Look deep within your heart, because I know the compassion is there, and it's just all about flipping that switch and saying, hey, now I'm ready to open up that and extend it to all beings. Open up that circle of compassion. It takes just one thing for one individual to flip that switch. It might be health for someone, it might be environment for the other, it might be the ethical side. Don't get me wrong, veganism is 100% about the animals, but it might be health or environment might be what get you on that path to veganism. Health was for me. And then it switched, and then I started to learn and educate myself and realized I could be doing more. For any vegan in here that isn't active yet, highly, not encouraged, but come on, get out and let's get active. You will love it. I promise you. You will find a form of activism that speaks to you. You will go to sleep one night after having helped someone make the connection. You will put a smile on your face, your head to the pillow, and you will wake up extremely grateful for what you did. Because that person who might be vegan now because of you is going to save a lot of innocent lives. And that's because of you. And that's a very empowering feeling to have. It's amazing. For all of my vegan activists in here, thank you so much for doing what you do. I am so inspired by your dedication and your passion. Honestly, anyone who is a vegan activist and does what they can is so amazing. But I want to let everyone know this is my life. My life is traveling around the world doing full-time activism. That doesn't have to be your life. Vegan activism could be, full-time vegan activism could be owning a vegan restaurant. Where are all the new vegans going to go? And where are all the vegans going to go if we don't have vegan restaurants? If you have a vegan clothing brand, that could be your full-time vegan activism. If you're a musician, start writing vegan songs and putting that out to the world. I want people to just start devoting a lot more of their free time to activism, because I'm well aware there are mothers and fathers with 2 kids and a mortgage and a job that don't have the availability to go out and travel to 21 countries and do full-time activism. So get out when you can and give your all when you're out there fighting for the animals. The animals would want us giving our best when we can. And I think understanding that, not putting anyone on a pedestal and not trying to have this vision of what a full-time activist is in your mind, if it only has to be what I'm doing, it could be anything. Just get out there and do what you can and give 100% of your efforts when you're out there fighting for the animals, and we will save a lot of lives together. So thank you again very much.